Hello, amplifiers. If you've been tuned into growth amplifiers for a while, chances are you know I'm a big fan when people don't just listen, they take action. They take new actions to achieve new results. And when we do that consistently, we build the right habits, we can cultivate transformation. And our guest today is an executive coach, author, speaker, and leadership consultant with an expert of a unique blend of insight, action, and humor. She has a great background helping people and recently authored a book, Butterfly Goo, The Down and Dirty Truth of Transformation. I'm excited to have her on Growth Amplifiers so she can share her insights and wisdom with us. I'd like to welcome Rachel Burr to Growth Amplifiers. Rachel, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for having me.
Transformation. I've been highlighting the positive benefits of transformation. I've been getting into the butterfly goo of transformation. That is such an interesting topic. And I guess I'll just ask you if you can start just giving us the backstory of what brought you to this vision and message today.
It's interesting. We talk about transformation a lot, and I think it's one of those things that it means different things to different people. And for me, what I was seeing was this myth, essentially, of transformation, that a couple of things. One, curated in social media, that there's this highlight reel that everyone has, and somehow we take that to be representative of the whole. And then when they talk about transformation, or even when we do out to the world, this idea that it's almost magical is a myth, but it also makes it seem unattainable. And so my point in all of this, working with my clients and just people in general, was to help demystify this and really break down what is transformation? What does it really mean? And how do you make it more accessible and actionable to anyone who wants to make changes in their life?
So I would have a different definition if we were having this conversation in the 1980s. Transformation was all about Autobots, Decepticons. Boy, I guess that resurged in the early 2000s. I'm showing some age here, but
I know I'm with you on that one.
but let's unpack that because I think that is an interesting thing for myself. We do live in a world where we have different concepts of reality. We have the things that we experience in our day-to-day lives, but then we go online and we see different realms of reality. And you mentioned highlight reels, and sometimes people get caught up and compare themselves against others. They think they should be better. They think they should be different. Then they feel bad about themselves. And you hear people just saying, oh, just do this, just do that, magically transform. Help us dissect that myth, getting it a little bit deeper so we can better understand the myths behind it and how we can approach it.
And you know what? Let me talk a little bit, because the butterfly goo piece, the analogy
Yes.
that I use,
I guess
because
we've
I
found the
know,
one.
I know it's so weird, which is the point. It's a humorous memoir that is about personal transformation and with some self-help aspects to it. The key to this, and you hear this all the time, that life is a journey and transformation is a journey, but what does that really mean? And I think we forget it's the old board games where we start at one end and we think we can jump all the way to the end of the game without ever having to go through it. So I use the butterfly analogy because it is one of the most well-known analogies for transformation. The butterfly is beautiful, it's delicate, it almost seems magical. I know. So it's really important to know that even in nature, and because we are part of nature, these kinds of things are not magical. There is a very specific experience. And to your point, it's not okay, here's your 5-step plan. And if you just follow this, it's magic. The reality is that you've got this little caterpillar, right? And it starts and it's destined to be a butterfly. So it goes in, it spins its cocoon, or technically a chrysalis, as my entomologist brother likes to say. So I'm sticking with cocoon because we all know that word. So it goes in and it spins its cocoon. And when it's in its cocoon, it actually dissolves into this green gelatinous goo. It dissolves down to its core building blocks. And from those core building blocks, it builds something new. So two things are really important for this, at least to me. That caterpillar takes everything it needs into the cocoon to become a butterfly. So for us, it doesn't mean that we're not going to learn. It doesn't mean that we're not going to develop new skills, but we are enough. We are what's going to turn into the butterfly. And so it's important to understand that it's not about turning ourselves into something we're not. It's about becoming and realizing the best of who we are. And that green goo is not just something we have to tolerate or we have to get through. It is critical to our transformation, that the challenges we face and overcome and how we grow, that is the path. That is the journey. It's not some magical thing. It's real, tangible, and it's doable.
I like the idea that you're helping people understand the answers are within you. I know a lot of people that I connect with, they're searching for that silver bullet, the elusive silver bullet, the thing that's just going to fix all their problems. They're looking for
Mhm.
that quick answer. We want the pill that will just get us in shape, but everything has, every shortcut has a consequence for it, right? And I love the framing of, in order to grow, you've got to challenge yourself. You've got to face the fears and conquer them that are holding you back. When it comes to change and transformation, where do you see most people get caught up and pre- hinder their future growth?
I think there's a few areas. I think one of the first ones is the realization that we don't find our path, we build it. And a lot of times I've heard people say, "Oh, I'll find my path," or "I'm waiting it for it to show up." And we may find the trailhead for the journey, but the journey itself is something we build. And when we take more of a passive approach to thinking it's just going to show up, that really does go back also to the magical part. So I think being able to take that challenge on ourselves, it's both empowering and scary that we're the ones that are responsible for this. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get help along the way. It doesn't mean that we won't have mentors, advisors, friends, people to support us, but we are accountable and responsible for our own development. I think one of the other things that happens is that people think when they hit this goo, when they hit this slog, that somehow they're doing something wrong, that they must be on the wrong path, or that maybe they're not good enough, smart enough to
Hmm.
keep on this journey. And one of the things we have to recognize, no matter how painful that goo can be, and it can be painful, frustrating, and demoralizing at times, that's all normal. It's not that you're necessarily doing something wrong. Not be that there aren't ways to improve. We all have opportunities, but that is a normal part of transformation. So when we hit that goo, when we hit that slog, don't give up. Keep going.
There's some thought leaders that I've tuned into that me understand, helped me to understand that our emotions that drive us forward and the actions that we take, they go hand in hand. And what we tend to typically get programmed to follow in our culture is, if we feel like something, then we'll take the action. If we feel confident about it, if we feel inspired to do it, if we feel motivated to do it, then we'll act. But the thought leaders that I've read about and listened to, and I'm working to change my own habits on, said we've got to act first and then cultivate the feeling. They go back and forth. So you may never feel the right feeling first. You may not feel motivated to do the thing you need to do. You may not feel confident about doing the thing you need to do. It may feel like that goo is something you really want to avoid. But if your goal is to be a butterfly and you're avoiding going into goo mode, you're avoiding the change that you can have for yourself, and that's limiting. When you're working with clients or the people that you coach, what are some of the things that they aspire to be and some of the common things that are holding them back?
There's so many things. And before I even just answer that, I love what you said. And I want to just unpack that a little bit,
Sure.
because we are a combination of logic and emotions. And a lot of the research actually shows that we like to think we're logical, but actually we are much more emotional. And we a lot of times make decisions based on emotion and then justify them with logic. So I think one of the things to realize is, to your point, we may not feel confident. In fact, for me, and actually, I think Brene Brown said this, that confidence or bravery is just fear walking. So it's fear, it's moving forward in spite of the fear, not because you don't have it. I think that's really important. And emotions are data. It's not that you feel something and therefore you automatically do it.
Mhm.
That can get us in trouble. But they're information. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? So even if I'm feeling fear, what is it I'm afraid of? Because then I can unpack it. And back to your piece about courage. Yes, when we feel more courageous, we're more likely to do more things, push more boundaries, have more experiences that can take us towards success. The challenge is, and I talk in my book about the little gremlins or the voice in our head that says, you can't do this. What are you thinking? Who do you think you are? What it also doesn't want you to know is, to your point, you may not feel courageous. You may not feel brave in the moment. But if you start taking steps, when you take steps, when you have those experiences, when you go outside your comfort zone, you will have the experience of getting through those hurdles and feeling more confident. So it works both ways. When I feel more confident, I will do more. When I do more, I will feel more confident. And then it's a very positive cycle that we go through. And this is true whether I'm working with leaders who want to be, say, the next CEO, someone who in their life wants to take more risks. Maybe they want a different job. Maybe they just want to travel more, or maybe they want to take on a hobby. There are so many things in our life we may want to change. Job comes up, relationships come up, but it's really all about you deciding what's right for you or where you want to go and then doing that. And by the way, along that journey, that may change. So I always talk about set your goals and hold them lightly. Don't think that they're not something you want to push for and drive toward, and recognize that along that journey, you may find an exit ramp that's exactly where you need to go.
It's beautiful. There are some goals that we definitely can achieve. There may be some goals that might not be in your wheelhouse. You think anything's possible, but there are some realities that just you might not have the time and resources to calculate and achieve a certain outcome. I'm probably not going to be on the NFL anytime soon.
And I'm not going to be in the WNBA anytime soon.
This is not gonna. It's not in a card. So if we had that dream at one point in time, it's okay to say, "Oh, I can't do everything," but I can find there are definitely dreams that you can pursue, and with consistent persistence, you can take the actions and guide yourself in that direction. And then, like you said, on your way there, you might take that side road and say, "This is actually a better destination." I
And
know.
I love that. And I think going back to your point, that goes back to those fundamental building blocks, our talent, skills, values, passions, understanding who we are. Because when you have those building blocks, to your point, maybe when you're younger or at whatever stage you're in, you want to take those building blocks and build this house or that bridge or whatever you want to build. You can acquire more building blocks like skills, et cetera, but those are who you are. And so when you think about whatever it is you want to do, what's in line with those things? What's in line with who you are and your aspirations? And yes, they may change. And knowing those kinds of things helps you make choices that are more authentic to you. So maybe this goal, to your point, me being in the WNBA, to be fair, that was never my goal. I can't jump at all. But you have this idea, and I think it happens too, because when we're in college or school, we think maybe we want this path because we're learning. And then we get out into the world and we realize maybe the day to day or the reality of what we had as a goal isn't actually what we want. And that's when it's time to go back to those building blocks and look at something different. It is different when you know you want something and you're pushing forward and you're hitting roadblocks or hurdles and keep going, as opposed to when you realize you're probably on the wrong path, but you're afraid to get off of it. And it's really it's important to understand yourself to know the difference.
I like the essence of what you just communicated because sometimes someone who's thinking of a goal they're trying to achieve, a lot of people in business, they'll get in the mindset, I need to have a big business. I want to make $1 million revenue or $10 million revenue, $100 million revenue, whatever it is. And that's just because they've gotten caught up in what other people have said they should do or what success is for other people. And a lot of times when these people do self introspection, that's not what they really want. They want to feel fulfilled. They want to have financial success. They want to be able to spend time with their family and loved ones. And that could be there could be a completely different path to get there that's more aligned with what they enjoy. how the people that you help, who are the typical people that you help, and how do you typically help them?
So I do work with a lot of leadership executives, so senior level leaders. And to your point, a lot of those folks do have the ambition to be CEO or et cetera. The thing I find with a lot of leaders is it's not necessarily about the goal, although it is because we tend to climb whatever ladder is in front of us. And it is always easier to follow a path that is already made. Joseph Campbell, who as a writer and philosopher was saying that if you go into the darkest part of the wood and you find a path already created, that's not your path. So what I find a lot of times with leadership and honestly life is that somehow there's this cookie cutter. This is what leadership is. It's this little star that you make the little perfect cookies and they all turn out exactly the same. The challenge is when you push that cookie into the dough, you're leaving out all this goodness. People are cutting off parts of themselves that are actually going to serve them in achieving what they want. And what I find is a lot of leaders are trying to cut out those parts of them to be the leader that they see other people either being or achieving, et cetera. And what I do is I help bring them back to going back again to who are you at your core? What are the building blocks? Knowing that and not trying to turn yourself into something you're not. Think about what is the leadership role you have or want, et cetera. How do you bring the best of who you are to being successful in that role? Because if you're trying to be something, you're not going to be successful and you will feel like an imposter. If you are bringing yourself to this role, that is how you will make yourself the most successful. It may turn out it's not the role you want, but in order to be successful, regardless, you have to be who you are and bring the best of that based on what the role is asking for.
So I've have two young boys who are 11 and 14, and we watched a lot of Marvel movies,
Mm,
right? In the Marvel Avengers, they have different people who have different skills. And to your point, they all bring something different to the table, and they've got to use their unique gifts for that synergy to really come into play. And I think when you know who you are and you show up as the best version of yourself, that's going to be playing your best hand. To your point, having the wrong, trying to be the wrong someone else, you come off as fake and authentic, and it's a hard thing to live. Now you have an exercise that people can check out, work through the playground from the
mhm.
playground section of your book. Can you
Yeah,
share more about what that might be? What's involved with that?
sure. Absolutely. So in the book, it's my journey essentially, but I invite you as well because I like to talk about the fact that we're the hero or heroine of our own journey. We are the one that is going to go through this process and win at the end, essentially. And we become transformed in along the way. And here's the deal. If you just want to read the book and laugh at me and my mistakes, do that. There are also takeaways and there are exercises in a playground that if you want to start experimenting with and exploring, do that. This is not a requirement for transformation. I call it a playground because it's an invitation to do just that. Just play. No expectations, nothing, nobody else is even going to know what you're doing. But what it does is it takes you through some self-reflection questions and helps you process where I am in the book and where you may want to go. It also has some activities that you can do starting to put some of these things into practice. And how do you take some of this into your outside world, not just in the book? And how much or little you do is completely up to you. It's a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Talk about the 80s in the books. The first playground area that I offer, it's really just a starting point about thinking, okay, what is it I want? What don't I want? Where am I? Is there a specific thing or target I'm going after? And what's going to help me know if maybe I'm on the right path or I'm not? So the first exercise is a great starting point, not intimidating at all for folks who are a little wary of this kind of thing, but it's a great place to start. And like I said, just play.
Now, playing around, somehow I jumped over your story of what inspired you to get in to write this book. What was that story in your journey that brought you to this butterfly goo?
Butterfly you. It's funny, and people have asked me this, and the best that I can say is I feel like this book has been trying to write itself through me
Mhm.
for a very long time, and I finally just gave up fighting it. You find yourself, even if I'm talking about this process and the idea of getting stuck in the goo, that it's very meta in the fact that even trying to write this book, I was finding myself in a lot of goo. I kept telling myself I should write a coaching book or I should write a business book or I should. And when I talk about in the book, the little red flags that are probably present before we want to acknowledge them. When I say I should do something, but I don't really want to, that's probably not a good direction for you to go. Yeah. Should I go to the gym? Should I do this? Maybe. But at least it's worthwhile to stop and listen. And so when I finally stopped thinking, okay, I have to write this kind of book. And I had an experience with a book I read. It's called Let's Pretend This Never Happened, a mostly true memoir by Jenny Lawson. And it is a memoir. She's beautifully sarcastic. Her humor is great. And I read this and I thought, I don't have to have this voice that I hear in a lot of books, and which are absolutely right for those authors. But for me, I can bring my humor, I can bring my perspective, I can bring my metaphors, butterfly included. I can bring all of that. And I think what's important, then you have this kind of breaking open moment a lot of times that it's not the end of your journey. It's actually where now you're open to moving forward. And once I realized that, then everything that had been leading up to this in my life, most of the journey that I write about in the book was leading me to the opportunity to share this with people. And I don't mean that I am the only expert out there that talks about transformation, that it's just my way. And I've told people who are aspiring authors that say, what can I possibly say that's never been said? And I'm in all of human history, probably absolutely nothing. But that's not the point. The point is we each bring our perspective. We bring our voice to what we're doing. And therefore, our voice may resonate with people that haven't found that experience or haven't found that opening before. And so we can reach those people. And for me, again, meta, goo, and I still find myself, because each new journey we take will find new goo, is that once I realized what I was struggling with and what I was fighting against, instead of just moving forward, that's when my real journey of transformation took place and how I got to the point of writing the book and being able to share it with the world.
Speaking of sharing, thank you, by the way, Rachel. Appreciate you sharing your story. If people want to check out this book for themselves, or learn more about you and what you do, where should they go and what should they do?
They can go to my website, which is just Rachel M. Burr, and I'm sure you'll have links in the show notes. So rachelmburr.com. And so there's a place on there you can look for the butterfly goo. You can also find it if you just look at Rachel Burr butterfly goo on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, you will find it there. So either of those places are a very quick way, easy way to find the book.
Super cool. That is definitely one that I think is a shareable thing. What a great gift. It may not be the holiday time when you're watching this, yet you can always give the gift to someone to help them see things differently. Rachel, you shared a lot of great information. One of the ways we typically end these sessions is if you could share something that you've learned on your journey that might be helpful for others on theirs. It could be related to the topic you've already been talking about, or just be anything that has risen up in this moment. What is something that you'd care to share to help others continue to move forward?
I think it's two parts. There are two parts. One is what we talked about earlier, is that we don't find our path, we build it. And the point about that is building it and taking those risks and pushing forward. Because if we want a different life, we have to live a different life.
Love it. That's a great one. Taking new actions, achieve new results. Rachel, thank you so much. And if you were tuned in, definitely I recommend checking out the book. When we see things from a different light, when we take the time to examine ourselves and reflect, that sets us up for the opportunity to take new action. We can always improve. We can always amplify. But if we're so focused just on checking the box and doing the routine, we can just be spinning wheels, staying stagnant. So always encourage amplifiers to take those actions. Check out that book. And if you have thoughts or comments you'd like to share, put them in the comments. We'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for your support. Here's wishing everyone a blessed and beautiful day. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Kenny.
To show your support, take a moment to amplify this message by sharing it online. To connect with me or gain more business growth insights, visit www.growthamplifiers.com. Thank you for your support.